This is the phone that convinced me to leave Apple. What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda here. You know that I love the Apple products. I have myself the MacBooks. I've got actually 3 of them, the M1 and a couple of M2s. I've got the new Mac Mini. I've got the iPad Pro and the iPad Mini. I've got the iPhone and a bunch of the old ones that I kept because I kind of like having a collection. Some people call it OCD. But this is the phone that convinced me to leave Apple, and I'm really excited about it, and I'm really disappointed in Apple. So what I thought I would do is give you a close look at this phone and tell you everything that I love and hate about it. All right, everyone, so what I have here is the Samsung Galaxy Fold5. I have said that if Ben Folds 5 had an official phone, this would be it. And obviously it is a cell phone and a foldable phone, like a foldable tablet. So one of the things that I have been doing is playing around with this just to see if maybe it could replace my iPhone, and I am happy to give you a conclusion on that at the end here. But what I want to show you is some of the stuff that just blows my mind, and I just really love it. So the first thing that I want to do, though, is tell you what I hate, because there's a list of things that I don't like about this phone, and it's not super long, but I think they're important. So the first thing is, if you're moving from Apple to Android, a lot of things are pretty similar, but there are a lot of differences in the details. Things like deleting and moving around, and I don't really understand why there's like a swipe up menu and I can go left and right on it, and then there's this top menu that I can go right and left on. I don't really get that. I don't even really understand how to delete things. I'm not sure why they show up in different places. So you know, that's just something that I think I could probably educate myself on with some videos. It's also probably something that you will get the hang of as time goes on, but Android and iPhone are different in a lot of meaningful ways, so it takes a little while to figure that out. The other thing that I don't like about this, and what you may notice here, is that it's not dimming at all, and that's because the auto dimming on this thing sucks. I do not understand how it is determining the ambient light, because I have been in some really bright situations, kind of like it is now, and it will go to like the dimmest setting. I don't know why it does what it does. Maybe there's a sensor on the back, or it's hidden, or I'm covering with my hand, or whatever it is. But in my opinion, if it is detecting that it's dark and doesn't know if it should really dim that low, it should default to a higher setting. So the problem is it's really over dimming most of the time. All right, now one of the things that I hate is that this is the phone mode here, and it is a stupid phone mode layout. It is way too narrow. So one of the things that you can see here is it fits nicely in the hand. I don't know why it's flashing like that on the screen here, just the refresh rate of the screen, but it's not in real life. It feels good in the hand, but it is just weird and dumb to look at, and it just feels too narrow. I mean, I can make a phone that is half as wide and twice as tall, and it's going to have the same real estate, but it's not going to be usable. I just don't like that. And so one of the things that I just don't like here is, you know, the layout itself. It's just kind of dumb. It's just not normal to any other phone. And I know a lot of people have said that in reviews here, but I think it is probably the #1 thing that has made me think about not using this as a phone. And that is because everything from email to, say, the Google Play Store, to reading a website, to looking at a PDF, just doesn't look like you would expect. A normal 16:9 aspect ratio or something similar would be what you'd expect, but this is just kind of dumb. It's like a 3:10 or something. I mean, it's just really different. Even though it doesn't look like that big of a difference, and even though you could get used to it, it's just weird. And I'm sure what drove this is the inside screen. I am convinced that they probably had a certain price point or a sweet spot that they met with the inside screen, and that meant making this outside screen this particular size, because there's no other reason to go to this particular size. So that's what I really hated. All right. Now, the other thing that I don't like is that the thickness on this thing isn't bad. It's not a deal breaker, but it could be thinner. And there are some phones coming out. I even think like the Pixel and the Honor and some of the other ones are thinner. And they are so thin that I think even folded, they are as thin as the iPhone. This one isn't quite twice as thick as the iPhone. With this case, it might be, but it is maybe 40% thicker, 50% thicker, and you can just feel it. I mean, it feels like a thicker phone in your hand. Not that it's a deal breaker, right? But it feels more candy barish in your hand than it probably should. Now, I want to show you, I put on this case here, and what it's done is it's made these camera protrusions flush. So if I were to put this down, it sits much more flush, even though the stylus portion is raised a little bit. But what the protruding camera partially defeats is using this as a tablet. Opening this up, and putting it down on the table and not having it rock. You can see it rocks because of that stylus protrusion, but if I didn't have this case, then I'd have the camera protrusion and it would kind of rock down here. It'd have this high spot up here. And so a lot of times, you know, if you're using an iPad mini or a tablet or something like that, you want to put it down, use the stylus, write on it, and not have it moving around. If you were to write on it like this, you can see it's going to move around a little bit. So I don't like that there's a protruding camera on anything, but on phones, we can get away with it because we're not really writing on phones a lot. But on tablets, I think that's kind of one of the expected ways that you would interface with it, and a protruding camera really needs to be addressed, okay? Now, the other thing I want to show you here is that closing this feels cringy, and the problem is that the hinge is really stiff, and because it's flat like this, there's no kind of pre-fold to it. So what you have to do is you have to put your thumbs down here to kind of fold it and close it, right? I don't even know that leverage wise you can just close it like this, right? You have to kind of put a thumb down there. And so it's just kind of the nature of it, but it feels like, oh man, you got to kind of really get your hands working on it, right? You need to use your thumbs. All right, the other thing I want to show you is the opposite way, is that even though I have a case, just understand that the edges are flush here. It's not super easy to open without getting your nails in here and opening this up, right? And if you were to even make this thinner, I think it's going to exacerbate the problem. There should almost be some offset little tabs here so that you can get your fingers on it and open it up like that. Kind of like you would on any hard case or a Tupperware box, right? Two little flanges would probably help a lot just to give you something to open this up. Otherwise, you really got to dig your fingers in here and open it up like this. The other thing is, without this case on here, what they have used is kind of like this shiny chrome-like finish on it, and it's really slippery. And if I didn't have this case, which is not really grippy, but at least it's like plastic, it's got a little bit of that rough texture, but it's almost like glass. It feels almost like glass with the rest of the case. And when you have that in your hand, it kind of just wants to slip, especially if your hands are slightly greasy or slightly wet or slightly humid out, right? And so I would actually prefer, even though it probably doesn't look as good, something with a little bit more texture to it, right? All right, now those are the things that I hate. Let's talk about the things that I love. I love the flush closure and this hinge cover, right? When this is closed, this looks very finished. It's got this piece in here that fills out the middle. If I unfold it, it kind of goes completely away. It hides in there, and then I don't see any mechanicals. I don't feel like something's going to get in there. It's not watertight or waterproof or anything like that. You could definitely get grit in there, but it just has a nice finish look, so I really like that. The other thing that I really like on this is that this case has a stylus, and this phone allows for a stylus. So if I were to pull up OneNote here, what I can do is write. You can't see that because it's yellow, but if I were to write like this, what I love about this is the fact that I can take notes, I can write shorthand, sketch something out, show someone what I'm thinking, and I have the stylus to do it. I don't have to do it with my finger. I can be much more precise. I could actually take notes on this. I could actually use it to do some work, and that is kind of a game changer. Having the stylus is awesome. The Google Pixel foldable phone actually caught my attention, but I realized after doing a little digging, it doesn't support styli at all. And so this is really, really nice. I really think that the stylus for when you have a tablet is a must, right? Doesn't work great, but it also doesn't need recharging. It's a little hard to hold because of how small it is, but it also means that you have your stylus with you all the time. So I don't have to worry about having a separate pen that's like pen sized that has to attach to it or put it in a case and it has to be recharged, anything like that. So I actually think this is a good compromise. I actually really, really like this. All right. The other thing I will say here that probably isn't great is the palm rejection isn't great. If you are writing and putting your palm on this guy, it interferes. So what you have to do is you have to kind of float your hand a little bit. That I don't love, but you know, it happens on the iPad minis too. I feel like it's a little worse here, and some of that can probably be solved in the software, but it's just an issue right here. The other thing that I really love about this is that wireless charging is retained. I was surprised. I actually put it on my wireless charger to see if it would work. Makes sense because there's nothing here, so you can have that wireless receiver under there, and you can put it on pretty much any standard wireless charger. But I wasn't expecting it to be there, and I love that it is there. All right, the other thing that I actually kind of love, because it doesn't bother me, is the fold. So it might be hard to see here, but if I get the light on there, you can see the fold. But generally, when I'm looking at this, and I thought it would be an issue for me, you know, I can kind of maybe see that ripple. I can feel it more than anything by running my finger over it. But when I'm looking at it, I don't see anything. And I think that's the issue with the Microsoft Dual Fold, where it had a seam because it was two fixed displays. A lot of people just can't get over that visual separator. And to me, you don't have that. It looks good. And when you're looking directly at it, even when you have lots of lights around you, like I do right now, it's not really visible. And so that actually surprised me at how little the rippling in the screen affects you from a user perspective. Now, like I said, if you are moving this around, you can definitely see it and feel it, but I don't think any of that really hinders the experience. So the screen rippling, which I actually thought might be an issue for me, isn't really an issue at all. All right, the other thing that I actually really like is if I were to type in something, I get the split keyboard. That's been available on the iPad a lot, but this is the perfect size for this type of keyboard. I actually don't really like it on the bigger iPads where your hands are really separated. It's just kind of in a nice natural position so that I'm not reaching too far over. You don't even really think about it because it's almost like typing on your phone like this, but then you're just moving your hands slightly further out, and so that muscle memory of where buttons are stays pretty consistent here. It's just kind of like adding some space in the middle of your smartphone. So I actually really like the split keyboard. I think it works very well. All right, I want to talk about the unified experience here because I actually think it works pretty well. So what I have is YouTube pulled up. We can pull up this King of Queens video here. I'm going to turn the volume down just so I don't get demonetized on anything. But this is kind of what you'd expect. You can see that weird layout again. But if I open this up now, what happens is we jump right to that app. And what's really cool is that, and you would expect this, a Google app running on a Google operating system to work very well. If I turn this sideways, we get this view. And if I bend it like this, we get the control panel down here. So for games and some of these other things, I think it would be great. For email clients, if you use the default Google email client or the web browser, it works very well. I use email called Canary Mail, and it freaks out. So it does not work very well on here. So some things are going to work well, some things aren't. In this mode, Canary can't really figure out if you're using a tablet or an iPhone, and so you kind of get this weird layout where it just splits it right down the middle, and it's not super user-friendly, but it still works. So some companies and apps really take advantage of the Fold, some don't so much. The other thing that I was going to say here too is that if I go ahead and maximize this, so now it's taking up the full screen, the phone is actually a little wider this way than it is the other way. And so if you go ahead and are watching a movie or a video or something like this, turn it sideways and man, you get a really big picture. It's kind of a subtle difference, but it actually makes a big difference from a viewing perspective. And so if you're sitting on an airplane or something like that and you want to watch a video, man, it is so nice. And then like I said, if you just kind of bend it up like this, set it up, you also don't necessarily need a stand for it, right? It'll kind of sit up on its own, and you know, it's its own little built-in stand, although it doesn't use the full screen. All right, so what I love about this is it's an amazing capability and pocketable. It's so much easier to get things done. I'm talking about this tablet mode. There are so many times when I am just waiting for someone. You know, you're waiting for your spouse to do a little shopping, you're waiting at the coffee shop for your friend to arrive, you're commuting on the train, you got a couple minutes of downtime. Whether you are trying to do some work, pound out an email, read a document, or consume, watch some YouTube videos or whatever, you know, read a book, it's just so easy to pop this thing open and use it. Having that capability to go to a tablet mode, even though this is much squarer, is so nice, right? Just to have that and not carry around another tablet. If I'm going to go out somewhere with my iPad mini, it's got its own case. I can't slip it in my pocket. I've got to be intentional about taking it. 99% of the time, it's not going to even be open. And so I don't want to carry it around, to be honest, but I would carry around a little extra weight for this tablet mode so that I would have it anytime. The tablet that you have with you is better than the great tablet that you don't. And so this gives you the opportunity to have both with you all the time. And the other thing about it is not only do you have both devices that fit in your pocket, You also aren't paying for 2 data plans. So my iPads have all been Wi-Fi only because, all right, then I will connect it as a hotspot to my phone and then use that data plan, and it's not real great, and sometimes then it's syncing, you know, and sometimes stuff is catching up. But on this, you only have 1 data plan because whether you're in tablet or phone mode, it doesn't care. So it could actually cut your data plan costs in half as well. So I think it's really good for that. Now, when it comes down to a decision, do you move from iPhone to Android, right? Like I said, Android is a little tougher for me to figure out. Samsung has their own skin on it. I get that they want to do that, but you know, it's not super simple to just move from one to the other. For the most part, it's probably like 80 or 90% similar, but there are some apps that aren't available on Android that are available in iOS. Some of the drawing apps, you know, that I have to move to Microsoft OneNote. Okay, no big deal. You know, those are some prices that you'll have to pay. But I love the phone tablet combo so much. I think you can learn to use that stupid narrow front screen. What I've noticed is that most of the time you hate it so much you just flip to tablet mode. But yeah, you can read the occasional email, you can see your text messages. I don't think anyone is ever going to love that aspect ratio for the front screen, but the back screen makes you love it even more, right? You know, it's kind of like a butterface. You like everything butterface. So, you know, this tablet here forgives a lot of the sins on the front. I wish they had gone to a more normal aspect ratio for the front screen, because what that would have done is made the front screen more friendly to us, but it would have made the tablet larger as well. We would have benefited on both ends from it. And so it's more portable than an iPad mini, even though it's maybe, I think maybe like 15 or 20% smaller on the tablet size. But to me, it's a worthwhile trade-off. And this is where I'm going to get into my rant about Apple. A lot of us loved Apple because they were doing things early. You were an early adopter. You talk about Apple, you know, multi-touch and slide down lock and facial recognition and cover flow and all these things. Everything that's in smartphones now was kind of invented by Apple, and when you got Apple, you were on that bleeding edge of technology, and Apple isn't like that anymore. It's like IBM. Like this stuff, touch screens that are foldable have been out for years now. The fact that they are pretty polished products is amazing. And I saw something like Apple has a patent and they have talked about testing foldables and they're going to get something out in 2025. Well, that's like 2 years from now, and we're already 2 years into it, and I can get a really nice polished usable product right now, and I don't care that it has 1 million folds. I don't care that it's not waterproof. I just want to be able to use it. I don't want to wait 4 years for Apple to put out something that other companies are already putting out. And so that's what kills me, is that it's not even being an early adopter. I just want stuff out, because at this point you could have put out a really polished enterprise quality product. I just don't understand why they haven't. But if you wanted to put out something that even suffered from like Antenna Gate or Apple Maps, something that wasn't perfect, that you could deal with, that you could get feedback on, that you could beta test on your customers, yeah, I'd be willing to be one of those people, because I just want it. I want to use it. I want to be productive with the time that I have. And so I would totally buy it. And you might be saying, well, Pete, would you be willing to pay for it? I mean, this was like $1,300, I want to say. And I think that's actually a pretty good deal. I want to say I paid like $1,500 for my iPhone Pro Max, and I paid like $500 for my iPad mini. So I'm $2,000 in it. And if you told me that Apple has an iPhone that's also an iPad and it's $2,000 or $2,100 or $2,200, I pay that happily. Take my money right now, because to me, it's about having all the stuff I want in a convenient form factor where I'll have it all the time. And that's more valuable to me than having 2 really good devices. You know, one device that can do a lot is better to me than having 2 really polished devices that are sitting at home. The other thing to me, and Apple's going nowhere, they're always going to be successful, but switching my iPhone to an Android device really puts on the table me switching all my devices. Because the reason I have an iPhone is because I was excited about it, and the reason I picked up the iPads and the Mac Minis and the MacBooks were because it worked so well. It was that ecosystem that we keep talking about, transferring photos easily, airdropping photos, having similar software, whatever it might be. But if I switch this is kind of the heart of it. And so I don't need a MacBook Air anymore, because there are better laptops. The Asus dual screen laptop is one of my favorite laptops of all time, but it doesn't work or play that well with Apple products. It's not super easy to transfer my files back and forth. I shoot a video and I can airdrop it to my laptop right away. But when I'm on the PC system, Apple to PC doesn't play super nicely. But if I'm going to go to Android, now it doesn't matter. I can go back to that dual screen laptop. And again, it's kind of the same thing. I like the MacBook Air. It plays nicely with other Apple products, but it's not innovative. There's nothing innovative about it. There's no dual screen. There's no other feature on the MacBooks that isn't lagging behind the other laptops that are available on price or features. And so I could get a better phone, I could get a better laptop, and now there's nothing holding me into the Apple ecosystem at all. And so I've been thinking about that. Hey, I'm going to keep using this, keep loving it possibly, but I may actually switch to some of these other products, and I may just be done with Apple products altogether. I don't know how much money I've spent on them over the years, but I've had the Apple Trash Can Mac. I've had the MacBook Air ever since it was on the Intel processors. So the issue is, I think a lot of people are going to start thinking about that. Now, the best part about this is that this is not the final stage in the foldable phone journey, because there are a couple other phones out there. Pixel, and then there's another one I can't think of, but the one that has really intrigued me, and it's not readily available yet in the States, is the Honor Magic V2. And so what they have done is they've made a foldable phone that has that normal aspect ratio on the front, and then has a larger tablet mode, and works with a stylus. And the fact that now potentially I can move to that and not have any trade-offs. And when it's closed, it's as thin as an iPhone. So I don't have to have a thicker phone, a chubbier phone. I don't have to have this kind of squished front screen. I don't have to draw with my hand. I can take notes with a real stylus. I mean, now we're starting to check off all the boxes, where this has definitely convinced me that I love this more than my iPhone. Something like the Honor Magic V2 could be something where it needs to be waterproof, because I'm going to lick it all the time, because I am not just in love with it, I am in lust with it. So I think there is some awesome technology. If you are open to looking at different phones, if you are looking to consolidate and get rid of some of your devices, if you want to have more functionality all the time, regardless of where you're at, then a foldable phone like this could be the answer. Man, it has really kind of blown my mind, and I am super excited about what comes after this as well. So if you want to pick up this Z Fold 5, I'll put a link to this in the description below. Peter Von Panda, out.